Hello, I am Jason Kuala George. I play keys alongside ShofarBand, and this is the keyboard tutorial of the song Rejoice off of our studio album, Behold. This tutorial will be covering how to approach the song in a minimalistic set without all of the many pads and all of the many tracks that you would definitely need to implement the 17 keys that go into making the song work using stock mainstage libraries, with the exception of one, which I shall be going into in a minute. The song is in the key of D. It is at a tempo of 118 beats per minute, and you need basically two essential ingredients to make the song the song. You need a piano that, for me personally, I don't use the stock mainstage pianos. I use what is called the Grand Rhapsody piano by a company called Waves. It sounds, with the exception of all effects, it sounds like this. In order to get the piano to be something very vibey and something that we can use live, I treat it a lot, a whole lot. Firstly, I compress it. So it sounds like this. What compression does is it basically squashes the minimalistic terminology. It basically squashes the louds so that the output volume signal is consistent, so that there are no real peaks, there are no real troughs. It tries to make it as consistent as possible by making the louds softer. Just because it's a vibey song, we don't want the excitedness of your strikes to affect the sound quality that we get. After that, I sometimes put it through a tape delay, which is very imperceptible there, but it's just around. But then I put it through a very large reverb, very large, not too high mix. I would say in terms of the volume of the reverb, I put it at about 72%. So it sounds like this. There is some pre-delay, but in a live context, it won't really matter whether or not there is pre-delay. It's just for the sake of your hearing. How does it sound to you? Okay, now that sound is the very basic piano that we're going to be adopting for this. We would then need a somewhat excitable pad sound. I personally use the retro synth, as I have, I believe, with most of the videos here. I do not do any kind of equalization on this because it's a praisey song. We want it to be nice and energetic, so it sounds like this, the pad without the piano. What does happen to the pad sound, though, is first I compress it a little bit, just the same effect of making, and I compress it very hard, so the maximum volumes come very much down so that it's a very consistent signal. That's the first thing I do. The second thing I generally do is I run it through a delay, just to give it some dimension, some size, some space to the signal, so it sounds very nice, very mellow, very lush. Now you take these two sounds, you treat them as one sound, you play them basically on top of one another, and you will get a very beautiful sound. Of course, the super excitable synthesizer sound needs to be very much lower than the keys, but it'll end up sounding something like this. You see, that is a bit too much synthesizer. We want to lower that, or at least I want to lower that because it sounds better to my ears. Yes. The song is a very quick song in terms of structure. There's not really much to talk about except maybe just the chords and then the interludes lick. So let's just take it from the top. Let's take it from the very first musical interlude. I'm not going to necessarily play through the intro. We're going to start at verse 1. The intro is very long. You can decide if you want to do it with your band. But starting at verse 1, the chords sound something like this. I generally remove the piano from the verses, just so that there's enough space for the guitars, the acoustic guitars specifically, to do their thing. It'll sound something like this, going from "We Will Praise You in Every Season." Hopefully you would notice that using this kind of approach to play all the different chords creates a subtle problem, that problem being the fact that the attack on my synthesizer is a bit higher. There's a time lag between when I strike the note and when the note comes to its fullest volume, let's call it that. For a song like this, therefore, that does have very dire consequences, especially for as long as we still have breath, we will praise you. For that specific section, the chords change quite quickly. You may want to consider reducing at least your bass influence in that section. So you'd play something like this. You try to, for the quick part, remove your hand from the bass section, just so that the dragging nature of your pad that you're using doesn't affect the bass guitar or any kind of bass frequencies coming from your band. That is every verse functionally. From there, we generally go into another verse, same chords. Actually, I haven't played through it fully, so let me just do that real quick. So that will normally be repeated twice, and then we'll go into the chorus of the song. At this point, we turn on our piano just so that we can use it as a percussive assistant in terms of laying down the chords for each section of the song, sounding something like this. Coming out of the very quick chorus, as I just demonstrated, we'll then go into the musical interlude, which sounds like this. In the original recording of this song, there are also a lot of breaks. I think you need to discuss it very carefully with your team, how you're going to approach that. Generally, merely lifting your hands off of the key for the break doesn't really work, because you have to deal with the reverb of the piano, you have to deal with the trails of the synthesizer. So just chat through that and how that would be handled in your band. Coming out of there, we go into another verse, which is of the same origin as the verses we covered prior. You remove the piano and you minimize your activity in the bass region. And then we go into another chorus, another interlude, and then the song is done. You're home free. This has been the keyboard tutorial for Rejoice. I hope it has been helpful, and I hope for brilliant execution in your local church context.